everybody, my name's Steve Schnee, and welcome to We're All Elvis. Essentially, We're All Elvis is me talking about my thoughts on Elvis Presley. I may have a top 10 list of his movie songs or a top 10 list of his Memphis recordings, but basically it's just going to be me sharing my love of Elvis and his music with you. Now, I may not share the same opinions as you, but I hope that you respect mine just as much as I respect yours. I'll be making these shows sporadically over time and sharing my thoughts and feelings about Elvis with you, as well as my collection of Elvis music. I hope that you enjoy this series, because you and me, we're alike, because we're all Elvis. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of We're All Elvis. I'm continuing reading the phases of his career. This is a blog post that I wrote 8, 10, maybe even 12 years ago. I don't remember. So I wanted to share it with you. If you want to hear my interpretation of the first 4 phases of Elvis's career, go to the previous episode of We're All Elvis. But this is the final 3. This is phase 5, 6, and 7 of his career. So sit back and enjoy this episode of We're All Elvis. Phase 5, The King of Comebacks, 1968 to 71. By the end of 67, record and movie ticket sales had dropped, and Elvis was no longer embraced by the music industry. His movies were fun but formulaic, just like the music. He started putting more energy into his non-soundtrack recordings, and while they weren't scaling the charts, he was sounding more connected to the music than he had since 1960. Since there was no interest in his movies or records at this point, Colonel Parker decided it was time that he returned to the medium that helped create the legend a decade before, television. The 1968 Elvis TV special is now called the 68 Comeback Special for a reason. It rejuvenated his career in a big way. The TV special showcased an artist with a fire in his belly that seemed to have been missing for years. With a new look, Elvis blew everyone away with a variety of songs old and new. With much of it filmed in front of a live audience, Elvis was filled with nervous energy. It was a stunning return to form. Suddenly, everyone who saw it was an Elvis fan again. He still had a few movies left on his contract, so he filmed those while focusing more on studio work into 1969. His sessions in Memphis are now legendary, and they gave him some of the most memorable hits of his career: Suspicious Minds, In the Ghetto, Kentucky Rain, and more. Elvis never sounded more connected with the music. There was a rasp in his voice that came from the soul, and every word he sang sounded like the gospel. Not only did he return to TV and studio, he also made his return to live performing. Those first 1969 shows in Las Vegas are now legendary. When he returned to Vegas in 70, his engagements were filmed for the movie That's the Way It Is. On top of the Vegas gigs, he began touring the U.S. again. To top it all off, he returned to the studio, and although not as groundbreaking as the 69 recordings, his studio work still sounded like he was connecting to his music again. Elvis had never been more alive, more real, and more in touch with himself and his audience. The excitement lasted throughout 71 before more changes began taking place. Phase 6, The King of Entertainers, 1972 to 77. Next to the soundtrack recordings, his 70s output is the most misunderstood phase in Elvis's career. Although this period started out well, Burning Love and Always on My Mind are 2 of his greatest singles, things went slightly askew commercially. Record buyers wanted more rock and roll from Elvis, but he seemed more interested in entertaining than rocking. His choice of live material included recent pop hits alongside songs he was best known for. In fact, his live set lists began to feature the same type of material that adult contemporary artists like Andy Williams and Perry Como would include in their own concert performances. His recorded output began to suffer as well. While most artists went into the studio to record an album, Elvis headed in to record as many songs as possible in a short period of time. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, and RCA Records would then take those songs and spread them out over a few albums, plus a couple of non-album singles. During this period, Elvis seemed to put his heart and soul in the type of songs he really connected with: the ballads, the country songs, and the gospel favorites. Elvis's voice still sounded great, but he wasn't always offered the greatest material due to publishing issues that you can read about elsewhere. However, when Elvis did actually connect with the material, he made the songs his own. Every one of his 70s albums contained classic songs and performances, although there are some tracks that are best left only heard once. However, he was still an extremely popular artist, and his Madison Square Garden concert in '72 and the Aloha from Hawaii satellite broadcast were two of the most celebrated highlights of his career, although I kind of consider his performance on Aloha to be uncharacteristically reserved. Behind the scenes, things were changing. Rock radio stopped playing his singles around '73, although he was still being played on country radio stations. In '75, he seems to have regained some of his energy on the Today album, but by this time, the momentum was slowing down. From that point, Elvis couldn't be bothered to enter a studio anymore. His final two albums, From Elvis Presley Boulevard and Moody Blue, were recorded at Graceland in his jungle room. And a dependence on prescription drugs and a never-ending tour cycle wore Elvis down. On August 16, 1977, it all came to an end. He was only 42. Phase 7, the king of the whole wide world. In Elvis's final years, he couldn't get a record into the pop or rock charts. Concert attendance was still good, but record sales were dwindling. However, when he died, sales on Elvis's catalog went through the roof. Entire record pressing plants had to set aside other projects in order to keep up with the demand for Elvis's albums. Elvis probably sold more records than any other artist in the world over the next year or two. And over the years, Elvis has released more albums posthumously than he did when he was alive. As long as there is interest in his music, there will always be reissues and repackages. In fact, the official Elvis Collector's label, Follow That Dream, has released amazing, digitally remastered and expanded editions of all of his studio albums and soundtracks, as well as loads of previously unreleased live shows. There's never been a more exciting time to delve deep into his catalog than now. There is so much great music to be explored. The king is dead. Long live Elvis. Well, I hope that you enjoyed the final three phases of Elvis's career. Remember, this is just my opinion. And coming up in future episodes, I'll be giving you my top 10 favorite movie songs, my top 10 favorite songs of the 70s, etc., etc. So thank you for spending the time with me now. Well, that's it with this episode of We're All Elvis. I hope you enjoyed it. And please come back next time. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, my name is Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.